Well, hey, everybody. It is Wednesday, and just want to follow up the teaching from Sunday as we started our series on emotionally healthy spirituality, and really excited about the series, and lots of good feedback so far just from the initial teaching. And so I thought I'd follow up. I do have a couple cards today, but I also want to give you a couple other things that I never got to mention in the teaching. I just didn't have enough time to mention it, so I wanted to make sure I did it here. So let's dive in to these questions. Number one says, do you think that temptation number 3 points to how mature you are in Christ? So we talked about 3 different temptations that Jesus had in the wilderness. The temptation that you are what you do, the temptation that you are what you have, and that you are what others think of you. And so that was temptation number 3. Do you think that points to how mature you are in Christ? I think all of them do. So as far as understanding that, the thing that's easy. I mean, you can dismiss these like, well, I'm more mature in Christ because I don't struggle with these things. What I was trying to say on Sunday is there's a lot of these things that we struggle with more often than we want to admit. And so I was trying to give some pretty, real examples of how those happen in my life even. But it definitely is. I mean, emotional, healthy spirituality, the whole point of doing this series is to understand how our emotions are deeply connected to our spiritual maturity. That's the whole point of this series. So we'll be walking through a lot of different things that way, but absolutely has connections. So I think that these other 2 are more comments. So in essence, we need to continue to seek God and His righteousness, God's kingdom. We need to leave our past, our childhood behind, and look to the cross. Second comment I'm going to talk about this Sunday, about talking about our past and how that affects our present. And I wouldn't say, we'll put it this way. I understand the sentiment of leaving your past. Yes, we should move forward from our past. However, what I'm going to talk about on Sunday is how significant our past affect our present. And really in ways that we may not even be aware of. So a lot of this, again, what we said on Sunday, emotions are radars, right? They're supposed to point to things deeper inside of us that we may not have previously been aware of. Our past is a big part of that. So yes, we're moving forward from the past, but the past actually has significance to our presence, and understanding that is really critical to our emotionally healthy spirituality. So seeking God and His righteousness, that's part of spiritual maturity. So of course, I would say, that's a part of what this is. Now, I think some people have tended to neglect emotions. We've talked about that. You can just listen to the teaching on Sunday, or go back way back when I did the teaching on Don't Make Me Angry. That kind of dove more into the concept. But the idea that emotions are a critical part of who we are, because we are a fusion of body and spirit and emotions, all that as one whole person. We're not separate compartments. So wrestling with our emotions is definitely something that's really important. All right, second card. How do we continue to show healthy love and care for others, even when we don't feel our own self-worth, such as depression, without burning ourselves out? So it's interesting. I think a lot of times there's a moment where we think we don't have the capacity to show healthy love, and sometimes I find that the practice of that is part of the process of healing for us. Now, yes, there are ways that people show love and care that may come out of an area of unhealth, and we'll kind of unpack some of those in the series. But I think it's easy to make this an excuse to say, look, if I'm burnt out and depressed, I can't show love. That's not true. In fact, it seems quite the opposite in a lot of ways. Now, that can be used in such a way to, if you're not journeying well, where that can become a burnout kind of thing, because you give and give and give, and you don't have a rhythm of letting yourself be filled back up by God. We'll talk about that in this series later on down the road when we talk about our limits. But the idea that we can't show healthy love and care for others when we are self-depressed, that's not true. You sure can. It's the idea of understanding limits within that, which we'll get to later on in the series. And I'll share a little bit about me, because I definitely have had periods of depression, and even now I would say there's moments where the seasonal stuff really starts to set in. So we'll unpack more of that as we go along. A couple of things I wanted to add on to Sunday that I didn't have a chance to say that I could spend a whole sermon on, so that's why I didn't want to mention it, because I thought I'd be heading down a rabbit trail. When we talk about knowing ourselves, I think one of the best things and tools for me personally is understanding my own personality. I think that's part of understanding your divine purpose and calling. When we talk about who we are, is understanding your personality and how you tick. Now, a tool, there's lots of tools out there, and again, they're for what it's worth, they're tools. It doesn't mean they're end-alls to things, and some people, friends of mine who wholeheartedly disagree with me on this, but for me, personality profiles are very helpful. My favorite one in the last several years has been the Enneagram. You can kind of Google and look that up. I found the best book for that is The Road Back to You by Ian Morgan Cron and Suzanne Stabile. It is the I'd say the most accessible book on the Enneagram there is. The Enneagram has 9 different numbers for personality profiles, and they're really based arguably in the 4th or 5th century Desert Fathers. So it actually came from a realm of spirituality. There's a lot of other things out there. Myers-Briggs is one. It's a psychological profile. I find that helpful as well, although that's more based on psychology and science. There's also the DISC profile that a lot of businesses use. Another one that I find helpful is StrengthsFinder. It tells you about your top 5 strengths. Those are other things that are helpful. Gallup does the StrengthsFinder. And in fact, we have a person in our congregation who works for Gallup who's very fond of the StrengthsFinder. I'd be more than happy to connect you with her if you're interested. But just really, there's a lot of incredibly helpful stuff of understanding who you are. And one of the things, person with the Enneagram that was helpful for me is really understanding how I process the world and how I take things and why I get frustrated at certain times, or what happens when I get really stressed. What do I tend to do? What are some things when I'm healthy do I express and pull from? And the Enneagram does a really good job of understanding that, and it's been really helpful for me to understand my good stuff. I mean, the things about my personality that people enjoy, but also the things that really get in the way, the things where I had to put my foot in my mouth, or even the fact that I had to put my foot in my mouth as part of my personality, or even the passions that I have, or the way I perceive the world is really helpful. That tool has been very helpful for me. And I would highly recommend that if you haven't walked on that journey. It has been so critical in my formation of understanding myself and really being a non-anxious presence with others. I wish I had that tool early on in my ministry career. If I would have understood that, I would have probably avoided a lot of situations that sometimes I got myself into on my own initiative. It's just been an incredible tool that way. So that's one thing I would highly recommend you to check out, because you'd be really shocked for some of the things. And it seems kind of eerie sometimes when you first read something like, wow, how do they know me, right? But that's what's so great. I think the other thing that's helpful with that is helping understand others as well. When you start reading other personalities profiles, and you start reading through those things, it's really like, wow. Like there's certain people that I can think of, and it makes so much sense now why I got so frustrated on how they said these things, or what they did, or the kind of situations they find themselves in, or how they process information or the world. Something like personality profiles are a great tool in helping know yourself, and in turn really having more empathy and compassion for others. Just a really significant tool for me, so I hope that's helpful. The other thing I want to let you know that I forgot to mention on Sunday is that we're going to have discussion questions for every week in the series, and in fact, I have those available, and as soon as the sermon gets posted, if it isn't already, online on our website, that discussion page is online on our website. If you click on the listen, specifically on our webpage at newgroundchurch.org under sermons, you'll see a link to download the discussion questions. Feel free to do that. There's some sort of good stuff in there to discuss with your family or community group, or with those you journey with, to just ask some questions to dive deeper into the conversation. So hope it's good. Hope it's a good start so far. Hope you have a chance to dialogue through it. This week we're going to talk about our past and talk about how that affects your presence. Really looking forward to seeing how that goes. Of course, we got Pumpkin Palooza coming up in a couple of weeks. We need a lot more volunteers. We got 10 to 12 spots we need filled up with a lot of different fun things. There's a lot of people that are planning on coming to this thing, so it's all hands on deck. Some people have just been kind of shy in volunteering. We need your help. If you want to, hey, I can help with whatever, we really need it. You got to let our team know. So make sure you let them know on Sunday. If you show up or email, give a call, what have you. Yeah, so a lot of things are coming up. We also are having our organization service on November 3rd. Really excited about that. I'm going to a classes meeting this weekend where they're going to celebrate our organization coming up soon. That, in turn, our nomination process for elders and deacons is due on Friday of this week. So you can email that to info@newgroundchurch.org. Just take a picture and scan it if you have the form. Our forms are also on the website under the contact page. You can look at it there in case you didn't get them the last couple of Sundays. To nominate an elder and a deacon, just use a separate form for each of those if you would. And then we'll be in the process of selecting those to put a slate before our ministry partners to vote on before we organize. So really, it's been a long time coming for that, so really excited about that. As always, feel free to ask more questions, continue the dialogue. We also have books available for you to purchase on emotionally healthy spirituality at the church facility on Sundays for suggested donation at $10 a piece. First come, first serve. We got about 10 copies of it, I believe, so you can take advantage of that as well if it's meaningful to you. Hope you have a great week. Looking forward to see you on Sunday. In the meantime, grace and peace.